Welcome. In this video, we're going to talk about Ssangsu Geombup ship Ibon, Form 12, Section 1, Part 1. Yeah. Yeah. As I mentioned at the tail end of the Form 11 Part 3 video, 12 is going to be an interesting beast to tackle in this format. So it's naturally broken down into 4 sections. I'm going to aim to have only 2 parts per section, otherwise this would be a very, very long series for Form 12. So just keep that in mind. So as you start seeing that breakdown, the section number is pretty canonical in how we usually break it down, but again, I just want to break it down even further so it's not like long, lengthy videos that could be. Now, if you saw that video or the clip right before, right, and you were like, hey, that's different, right? Keep in mind, this form, at least for me personally, is the form that probably changed the most of any of the Geombup in any of the forms I've ever learned. Right, so again, I learned this when I was so sneak preview into like the history of this, right? So I had to learn this form for my first dan, right? So I had to know all 13 Ssangsu forms in order to test for first dan. So I learned this form not quite 20 years. It's getting close. It's getting close to 20 years ago, but a very long time ago, right? And I find it very interesting because again, different doesn't mean wrong. And that's not just swordsmanship, but we'll keep it neutral here. But different doesn't mean wrong. So the intentionality of the form, perhaps when it was presented to me earlier, may be different from the intentionality of what we're doing now. Again, that doesn't mean one is better or more correct than the other, but I want to give you a snapshot of changes in this form as we go. The reason for that is not to be like, hey, this is, my history or whatever, but to show that each of those differences has a reason. But again, they changed it also for a reason. So there's a lot of interesting interplay here. So I know this is a very weird introduction to this video. So it's the first one. It's the first one for 12, right? So keep in mind, I'm going to try to give you a breakdown of the changes as well as potentially some other influences and all that fun stuff. But let's actually get started, otherwise I'm going to talk for another 30 minutes. So let's get started. The very beginning of the form is a choice also. It's kind of fun, right? So we have our most standard draw, right? We're going to start off with a basic draw into a key up as we grip it. So by the time our hand actually makes contact with the left, with the bottom of the hilt, it's already getting ready for a spin up into an overhead thrust position. So the theory behind this, right? So if we draw as my left foot plants and as my left foot or left hand grabs, I'm immediately going to shuffle into a downward thrust in a sosei or a short stance. Let me show you a better short stance than that. Stabbing into someone over here, right? Now I'll show you the next move just to give you some progression with this, right? And from here, actually that brings me into an interesting point, but we're going to step forward into a guard. So before I talk about this one, because goodness knows, also may be different, right? So let's talk about that very first movement, right? So there's a lot of different interpretations for what that could be happening. It just breaks the rhythm of a lot of our forms, right? So someone is allegedly aggressing us, right? That's the purpose of these forms. I am in a defense into a thrust. So if you recall from Form 8, this thrust is usually after I've, maimed the opponent, and this is meant to be a finisher before moving on to a different direction, right? I haven't done anything to this person yet, right? So it might be like, okay, what's going on, right? So one interpretation that in terms of interpretations that are more mainstream. I like this one. So one interpretation is I'm going up and over perhaps someone's shield, right? And going in for a nice little stabby, right? It could be an interpretation I don't love is you kind of walk into an already happening battle and there's someone on the ground like, hey, you're gonna move on to the next one, right? So there's a lot of different interpretations for that one. The spinning mechanic is interesting, right? Because not saying you can't do this with a longer weapon, and you'll find out why I'm mentioning longer weapons in a little bit. So spinning is very much more of a longsword or even a shorter sword, right? Mechanic, right? You don't usually think about having a massive sword swinging up into going into a downward thrust. So potentially reasons for this. So if we are going with that overhead thrust over a shield, for example, if I have aggressed at them, right, they are probably getting ready to do something with their shield. They see the sword go down. They're likely thinking it's going to come like for their legs, for example. Like, so if you're fighting someone with a shield, legs are tasty targets, right? So they see it going down, and now I can thrust, right? So that's an interpretation. Again, that's a little bit more me pushing that agenda a little bit more, because it's usually just said, yeah, I'm just stabbing someone over a shield. But the idea of dipping low, if they're dropping their shield, again, if you ever fought with a shield, shield's great to stop an attack, but also blocks what you can see through the shield, right? So depending on how big the shield is. I mean, doesn't depend how big the shield is, you can't see through it, but if it goes low, they might be really thinking I'm going to go for like a thrust towards their toes or whatever, and then go over top and stab. You can even think about grabbing the rim of their shield and stabbing in this way. Just be aware that they also probably have a weapon needed. So, all of that to say, that is one couple interpretations for that overhead thrust. Into our next motion, this specifically, this parent group of moves has changed significantly throughout the years. So I'm gonna try to show you the way that I'm supposed to do it. I very rarely am able to, just because the shoulder's a little bit funny. So from here, it's going to come up. My palm is going to reach out, and I'm going to reach this way. So notice the blade is on its side, the hand is almost like cupping the bottom, right? And the sword is still over the head. So you're gonna see me do this instead most of the time, just because it's easier, unfortunately, right? As opposed to being into one of these guys. So I want you to first, again, you can pause the video and really try to contemplate what's going on, right? So when we think about using a support, right? So 99% of the time, right, you're not using it to actually block. And what I mean by that is, if I block and my hand is, and my sword is on the back of my palm, on my wrist, on my elbow, that's on my elbow, but you get the idea. If I receive a full-blown strike, yes, probably half of the force is going to go into this hand, which is fine. Like that's fine. The other half is going into my bones over here, right? Very likely damaging and or breaking, and probably both, right? So almost never do you actually like use this to block because of this motion, as well as the blade that's cutting down this way will probably remove a digit or two as well. So perhaps that's what this is also working toward. I'm going to give you my best explanation for that one, but I want you to pause the video, really think it through, and come back. Theory time, right? So the again, something that I mentioned at the tail end of the Form 11 video is Form 12 specifically has a lot of callbacks to things in the Ssangsu section of the Mudobu Tonji, right? So again, the oldest remaining like Korean manual, right? So keep in mind, if it's a historical one, they're talking specifically about the Ssangsu Gum. Ssangsu Gum, again, if you think about the Odachi or like one of those longer swords, even this is still short for that, right? So theoretically, if where you start to see this, that's probably about the right size for the handle, but should go an extra foot or foot and a half, right? A little bit longer than that. So I'm going to talk about this introduction first. The rest of part one is relatively straightforward, and we're going to play with some ideas in a little bit, but keep that in mind as we go through these forms. Again, this form is the closest to the Muiri double tonji. So when we talk about this block, right, consider the length of the weapon, right? So again, this is me giving it as best that I can. So if I have a much longer weapon, notice I'm no longer like cupping the tip, which is a terrible idea. I'm here, right? So I actually can support using the forearm and having up this way to cover. Now, so that is my best interpretation for that one. This also comes into play for the very, very beginning of the form. Now, this is very much an Aizawaism, so I'm Mr. Aizawa, right? So this is an Aizawaism of, this is my personal interpretation of why we're doing the beginning that we had, right? So in the form, allegedly, we draw defense, we do our overhead thrust into our guard. If we think about it like we're looking at it as a source book, we're going to see a bunch of images, right? So first of all, always look at the Muiri double tonji. It's really fun, right? Let's just say we had, I might get rid of the first picture, but if you were to make pictures of this, you'd probably say picture 1, picture 2, picture 3, right? For the purposes of my shoulder, as well as functionality, keep in mind it should be this one. I'm going to revert it back to this one for the purposes of just speeding things up a little bit. If you were to smooth that out, and remember the sword we're using, this sword probably wasn't in your waist, right? In the sense of that we're wearing it right now, right? It could have been hanging from the waist, like if you have not tassels, the strings, that's a word, the strings coming down from your hip, almost much more likely if you didn't have like someone holding the scabbard for you to draw. If it's at your hip, you would remove the scabbard, and again blade down, because that's just the natural geometry of wearing a sword, right? Because it's a curved sword, the vertex is going to go down. As I throw it back, this is naturally going to come up this way, right? Or into that position. So let's just say we saw an image of this, and we wanted to get to those positions. With a long sword at your hip that you can throw back, this makes a lot more sense to me personally than, again, very long sword, curl up, defense, roll into a downward thrust just to move that momentum back forward. Again, when you're using a heavy weapon, momentum, you really have to go with the momentum, and if you're going to go counter it, you really need to know what you're doing, right? So this is naturally using the weight of the weapon, and your footwork is following suit. So that is my personal interpretation for getting up into that position. I don't want to say it was like a misinterpretation of the source material, but that is my interpretation of what those motions could be if you didn't want to dedicate yourself to that overhead thrust. But I talked a lot about that one, so let's actually keep going a little bit. Keep things moving. So let's get up to that point, right? So we draw a defense, again, nice little key up, thrust, maybe going over the shield, and then into this position here. Now notice we're in a bomsei, or our back stance. If you want to be more Federation, you can have that back knee tucked in a little bit more. But from here, again, assuming we have, again, a decent mass to our weapon, again, it could be a very long sword, it could be a heavy sword. From here, we're going to, let me just make sure I have space for this one, pop up. You're going to step forward one-handed, cut over your right shoulder, one-handed cut from the left into cross, into a Ssangsu and our yoke sodose. So with our twisted out knee this way, right? So let me try it from this way as well. So again, draw air, sodose, stab, stepping straight forward, bomse. Again, make sure that back foot's on the 45, and you can bring that knee in a little bit as well. So move back, right? Pop up, cheonse, yoke sodose, right? So let's finish that combination up until that we pause naturally, right? From here, keep using your hips to keep moving. Step through, one-handed cross-cut into that same block, either this one or this one, but now in a short stance. That's where we're going to naturally stop for now for the first part, but let's talk about it, right? So a few things. If we do have a heavier weapon, we do want to use the natural gravity to help with cutting, right? So if we're here, we pop up, I'm going to step past it. So notice that the blade relative to the room stays relatively where it is as I step through, as we're right now in a good position. Whoop, but my stances are wrong. Pop up, step through, one, and I'm going to think about really using the hip to twist to the side, twist, cut, and kill that momentum by bringing it up into our yoke sodose. This form, again, I think there's a lot you can learn from this form. It's a really, really good form. It's one of my favorites, right? Is how to, especially if you're using a heavier weapon, here, using the natural ending of the motion, again, going past the hip to twist into another cut and twist into here. Form 12 is one of the best forms, that and also Form 2, for learning how to use a very long weapon. So let's actually try that with the other sword as well, because that one, if you're not familiar, right, it's called a subdivisions, which is a much bigger, heavier sword. Let's switch to that one. I do love a good sword, right? I really like this one, right? So we were in that position, again, with the natural weight of the sword, popping up, stepping through, 1, 2, right? Using the big arcing motions of that sword. Now, you're going to notice as we go through Form 12, we're going to have these pausing beats, but it's a beat in which you can move to get even more power, right? So you might think, Ssangsu, sword has stopped, and it's not really high up to get some gravity. What's going on, right? So you're going to use your body essentially to whip it around, right? So from here, from this position, I'm going to step through, and from here I'm going to use my hips to drive the sword through, bah! And I'm going to naturally use this as a pausing point. So again, for me, and probably no one else, honestly, but for me, the way I interpret this is a pausing beat, not a block. If you have a very long sword, you need to be able to be in the position to realize, like, okay, I need to move this way, or I can maybe move up this way. Hint, that's what we're going to do next, which is a choice. But I want to be able to regain control of the weapon. That's what this Ssangsu is for. That's what these guards are for me. That's what these high guards are for. So we just did our big cross cut, wah, this way, right? From here, again, whipping your hip around, bah, this way. So you're going to notice you can use your body to get so much power. I'm getting a little excited. So much power from these swords. So that is, again, very much not canonical. This is me having some fun. So we're going to pause there. I want to give you a little bit of history with one of our first moves, and you're free to go. I said that as if I was keeping you here, right? Right, like as if you didn't have agency to leave. So this guy, right? Let's take a look at the way I very first learned it. I think I gave you a little bit of a hint when we started Form 8. So when I first learned this, again, 17 years ago, something like that, right? So it was a hot second ago. We used this as a brace to thrust. So, reason I like that, right? So, if I'm just throwing a thrust without any support, it's probably easier mechanically, but it's far less accurate. By having that little fulcrum, it lets me be a lot more accurate. So again, thinking about pool players, right? Where I'm not going to pretend I've never played pool in my life. So I know they do like the this thing, right? So if they were just like, there's a pool table here, there's the white ball, which I'm sure has a name, but I'm trying to hit that white ball, and I'm just standing over here being like, ha, ha. Very accurate. It's going to destroy the table, or at least the velvet on the table. Versus having the whole, like, this thing, we kind of meet that way, right? So, same idea here, right? So by having that fulcrum, I can move that tip around, bah, and have some, obviously you probably wouldn't do that one, you probably do this one, but you have a lot more accuracy to stab, right? So again, in case this angle helps, right? Being able to see where I want to go, stabbies, or stabbies, right? So that was the way I originally learned it, right? And then the other moves helped with the idea. So again, imagine we had a very long sword. I did do this stab. We would normally pull back, then throw up 1, 2, 3, and keep going through the form that way, right? So that was one interpretation that we had a very long time ago that I know is still popular. I still like it. It's just not what we do right now, right? So that was a while ago, right? So we've had this one. We've also had just the blade off to the side as a cover. And now we kind of go this way, trying to have a little bit more of the full range of motion. So again, if there is a key purpose to this one, aside from, actually there's one more, right? One more treat. So, one justification for this weird kind of guard is because we go into a low stance, theoretically I'm past the apex of the strength of their strike, right? So, theoretically, if I see you, I'm like, ha, bah! This is sort of my best range, but if you dip low to get into, whoop, I will make sure I'm in camera at least, but if I dip low, ha, this way, I'm past it. I'll probably still make contact, but it's not as powerful as it could have been. So that is one reason why sometimes we dip into those really, really deep stances. So again, think about Ssangsu 7 with the Bokusei cover, that you're allegedly past the apex of the strength. However, I want you to keep playing with it and have some fun. So, we're starting Form 12. I know this is a very, very lengthy beginning, and hopefully things will probably be a little more concise in the future, because there's going to be less conceptual stuff like this one and more just let's talk it out, right? So with that, make sure you stay safe, stay humble, and keep training.